everyone. Welcome to this month's podcast. We are your hosts, Sophia
and Naya. So there are many events currently happening in the world, and as many of you may know, there's a war between Russia and Ukraine. On behalf of the entire podcast crew, we would like to dedicate this episode to all the students that may be affected by this war.
Today, we will be speaking about two topics, spring equinox and how March got its name. Now on with the podcast.
One more thing, stay tuned for special days happening in March, as well as some fun facts.
Now on with the podcast.
So I just keep seeing the words spring equinox all over the internet. Do you know what spring equinox is?
Yeah, spring equinox is the time of day that marks the beginning of spring. In the year 2022, so this year, it's on the 20th of March at 11:33 a.m. Eastern Time.
The start of spring is on the 20th of March? I was told that spring started on March 1st.
Well, technically, both days are accurate. It just depends on the perspective. Astronomically speaking, the first day of spring is marked by spring equinox. Meteorologically speaking, the official day of spring is March 1st.
So is it March 1st or March 20th?
Technically, it's not until March 20th that spring starts, but weather scientists use March 1st as this simplifies everything. Weather scientists divide the year into quarters to make it easier to compare seasonal and monthly statistics from one year to the next.
Okay, so since spring equinox is the start of spring, does that mean equinox means the start of?
Not quite. The word equinox comes from the Latin words equal, night. But funny enough, this is not the same case for all parts of the world. In the southern hemisphere, the March equinox marks the start of autumn, while the summer equinox marks the start of spring.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since we live in the northern hemisphere and the south is the opposite of north, that's why the weather's almost the complete opposite.
Correct.
So I have other questions about spring.
Sure, what are they?
So according to folklore, you can stand a raw egg on its end on the equinox. Is this true or fake?
Well, actually, I've heard this folklore, and my class once debunked it. It is true that you can stand a raw egg on its end during spring equinox. However, you can also stand a raw egg on other days as well.
Okay. So which day has the most sunlight in North America?
The longest day of the year varies from the 20th June to the 22nd of June. However, in the year 2022, so again this year, the longest day of the year is Tuesday, June 21st.
You also mentioned before that equinox means equal night. Does that mean that on the day of spring equinox, there's the same amount of day as there is night?
Well, this word is kind of a misnomer because that's actually not true. Although the daytime and nighttime almost span for the same amount of time on this day, they are not the same length because, luckily, daytime will always be longer.
Do you know why?
Well, it's because the sun is not a point. It has upper and lower edges.
Okay, so, well, I learn something new every day.
Speaking of March, spring equinox, how did the word March get its name?
March is named after the Roman god of war, Mars, also known as Ares in Greek mythology.
But why would they name the month after the god of war?
That's because this month used to be the time of year to recommence the military campaigns that were delayed because of the middle of November until then, with the winter. So with military comes war, I guess. And as well, in Roman myths and religions, many of Mars's festivals happened in March.
Now that we have a brief history of March, what other fun facts can we tell the Bursey community about this spring month?
So March has many wacky days, and one of them that happened on March 3rd was If Cats and Dogs Had Opposable Thumbs Day.
Wow, that's so random.
Yeah, it's basically the day where you think about how much trouble your pet dog or cat could get into if they had thumbs like us. Personally, I have a dog myself, and I just think it would be very funny if he could turn on our television.
Well, I bet you didn't know that on March 21st, it is Absolutely Incredible Kids Day.
I did not know that. Well, since it passed already, I'd like to wish every student a happy belated Absolutely Incredible Kid Day.
Naya, what other important days are in March?
On March 8th, it's International Women's Day, and it's a day to acknowledge and celebrate the wonderful women in our world.
Well, on behalf of the entire podcast team, I'd like to say thank you to all our female staff. You are great, and we respect all that you've done for us and our school. Our school would not be the same without you.
Thank you, Sophia. And before we wrap up this segment, there's one more fun fact that I would love to share with you. March is National Umbrella Month, And I thought it was April showers that bring May flowers.
Ha ha ha, Naya. Speaking of April, stay tuned for more episodes of the Bursey Podcast.
If you liked this month's podcast, let us know. If you have any suggestions, make sure to let us know in the comments below.
See you next time.
Bye.